Hello, this is Janet Gallen welcoming you to Love Letters Live. Today's guest is, as far as I'm concerned, a gold mine because Jenny Erwin, let me introduce you first. You say hello.
Hi, glad to be on today and have this conversation with you.
Me too, with you. We were introduced by a mutual friend, and when I heard what Jenny had discovered, yes, of course, I had to get to her. So, Jenny, let me just go right to you. Tell me what you did discover, please.
I discovered over 450 letters that had been correspondence of my father to my mother during the time of their courtship and during his service, primarily when he was in the Pacific in New Guinea.
Okay, well, you said from your father to your mother. Do you also have letters from her to him in response, or are they all from your father?
They're all from my father, but I have her diaries. I have about 5 years of diaries. She never threw anything away,
God
which
bless
I'm
her.
grateful
Yeah,
for.
yeah.
So it's his letters, postcards.
Okay. I didn't realize that. I thought it was okay, well, that's good enough. So,
Yes.
and my question is, how did you find them? Was this after your last parent passed away that you found these somehow, or did you always know about them, or what?
Well, I sort of knew about them. They were back in a closet where my sister and I shared a room. And they really became evident when we moved mother from her home of over 60 years
Wow.
to an assisted living. It's only the only home I had ever known, to an assisted living. And we put a lot of her stuff in storage. And eventually, because I was the oldest and I took care of her finances and personal things, those were sent to me. And
Those were sent to you from the storage?
yes, I mean, I helped send them either. And I was trying to remember the other day because some of the furniture was sent to my sister
I
in Burlingame, California. And so that's how, some way it got into my possession.
Okay, you're being watched over. I'm so
Yes.
glad that now you knew about them before, but you never went to peek at them or read them.
No, I didn't. I was still working full time in San Francisco. And it was only after I retired full time in 2013 and was kind of bored and trying to figure out what to do.
Oh,
And John, who was working on remodeling our place in Pacifica, said, "Why don't you go to Arizona and get away from here and see what is in those boxes from your mom?"
okay. Now I'm just curious if you had, because I've had these conversations with people who actually one person who came across letters that would have been, I think, so valuable emotionally and historically, and her parents were both gone. Maybe it was even, anyway, she threw them away without reading them because she considered them personal for their eyes only. Now, I can understand that. On the other hand,
I didn't feel that way. I was probably nervous about reading them because I wasn't
read
sure
them.
what I would find out. I was. And the first thing that I did was I put them in chronological order, and then I put them in Ziploc bags by the years.
Good for you.
And then because, you know, they weren't always in order.
Sure.
And so I did that. And then I started going through them. And I realized, oh my goodness, what an important history. And the other important,
Can we just take a break on that last sentence?
okay,
I want to, the word history. When I've been reading certain things, and the last two things, well, couple, maybe the last three things I read were historical biographies, big, important, and they were almost all based on letters. They were based on the letters that one author found that in the Churchill family. I mean, these authors must spend, well, I know this last one spent 4 years reading, Plato and Aristotle, and was doing a history on our first four presidents, all from letters. It is the most reliable history we have. All right, that's my
yes.
soapbox. So, what were you afraid that you said you were afraid what you might find? What were you?
I don't don't know. I mean, again, it was personal. My father had died when I was 21. So I didn't really know him as an adult.
Oh.
And I wasn't really sure, what might be in there. And the other thing is in terms of confidence and making sure that mother was okay, I decided that I needed to tell her that I had found them, and
Oh,
I asked her permission.
okay.
And this, I
So you
mean,
did have that sense of privacy. You did have
well,
a sense of it that you asked. How lovely that you.
yes. And what was interesting is I asked her around her birthday when she turned 99 in
Oh,
the fall of 2014, and I knew that if I was going to do this, that I need to do it sooner than later.
right.
And I had actually copied several of the letters because they're fragile. I didn't want to take any with me, but I wrote several of them I should have copied them, but it was hard. It would have been hard to see, but I wrote them in a notebook. And she was living in a nursing home at that time. And we had taken a walk around the grounds. I'd pushed her in a wheelchair, and we came to her favorite little place. And I said, Mom, I need to talk with you about something. And I said, I found the letters that Dad had written you, and I wanted to write a book about you and Dad during that era. And I started reading some of the letters, and her face just lit up. It was like she was carried back to that time when she was that person, that young woman, that new wife. And so I said, and I'm emotional now. I said, Mom, is it okay if I use these letters to tell the story of you and Dad and his service in World War II? And she was just like, just kind of quiet and nodding, acknowledging that she heard what I was asking. And she softly said, yes.
Oh,
And so I hugged her and cried, and I'm so grateful because I wanted her to know. And then a year later, in May of 2015, she passed away.
oh.
So what's been important to me is that both of my parents have come alive.
Okay. So take a stop there. I just like to
Okay.
take a little stop at moments that are so important that they need to kind of just float there in the air for a minute. That it made them come alive. I have noticed over the years that I've been doing this, maybe 14 years by now, that letters that seem like they would be a goodbye most often are a hello. And for exactly the reason that you said, it takes people back to their youngest, strongest selves. And what a gift that is. You're not going to cry alone here, by the way. I'm totally joining you. I'm so touched by this all the time.
Yeah.
And let me ask you, what, if I may, I don't know how long an answer this might be, but what did you find out? Two things that you didn't know about your father, which I guess would be a lot since he was too young. You were too young to have lost him. What did you
Yes.
find out that surprised you?
How passionate and deeply he loved Mother. And how patriotic he was. I mean, he was much older. He didn't even think he was going to be recruited because he was 34, but he was very patriotic. He really cared about his country, and he was willing to fight for it.
And were you born, but I don't know how old you are, but were you born when
No.
okay, so this was before, uh-huh.
So here was the other thing that was really significant for me that I didn't know. My mother's name was Virginia.
Uh-huh.
And he at first was Virginia, and then Genny. And then in his letters, it was Jenny, which is my name.
Oh, of course.
And he got home on December the 6th, the day after his 38th birthday. They wanted
And
to have a
what year was that?
45.
Oh, okay. So before, okay.
Okay. And then 9 months later, I was born. Their letters talked about wanting to start a family, how they were going to do that. So it just made me feel like, oh my goodness, they had a lot of fun days and I came along.
Really?
But that was really special.
Question about that because people so often think of their parents in their older years. And I hear people talk about just recently with a love letter I did with Mark Anthony, who's he's a psychic and a medium. And he was talking about channeling people who have passed at very old ages. And he said, and we don't have to remember Granny is just some little old gray-haired lady who baked and knitted. And what is this perception that is so many people have of their older grandparents, older grandparents in particular, and parents also sometimes, because that's the last you see of them. And they weren't always like that. They were, you talk about how passionately he loved her and they set about to have a baby and, all that implies. And yes, it's so nice to know I would think, for you to be able to know your parents as just young, passionate,
Yes.
couldn't keep their hands off each other
Yep.
people.
And his letters were fun about that. And,
Like,
missing your loving arms and so it was really good to know how much they really loved each other, and that love and knowing that she was there and writing him, and the passion, it kept him alive and motivated and hopeful in the jungles.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to cry again. Okay. So that the whole business of hope is so critical to life.
Mm-hmm.
Losing hope is the first of the goodbye. So you're saying that her passion for him, her desire for him, kept him going. Isn't that important?
Yeah. Well, and she wrote him every day.
In her, but you don't have those letters, but you have her diary. Is that what?
I have her diary, and she wrote him every day. And he would say, I got 6 letters from you today.
Oh.
I got a Vmail from you today. I got, a package from you today. They could send razor blades in the mail because in the jungles, he still had to shave every day and he couldn't. They didn't always have razor blades.
Well, then talk about what you learned about his life in service. He was in the Army, I'm guessing. This was Army.
Yes. He and his brother were partners in a business, Jett Firestone, tires and service station. And so he ended up he was part of the service. He was not infantry. And so basically his job, he was a shop foreman of minimum automotive maintenance. So they were keeping the vehicles running in the jungles.
Oh my goodness, I see. I can't even picture life such that male could get to a jungle.
So, do you know about Vmail?
No, that's what I was just asking you. What is Vmail, please?
Okay. Vmail, and this is what they would do. It was discovered in Britain, and basically what the person would do is that they would get a piece of paper that had lines and everything, and they would write on, what they wanted.
Uh-huh.
This would be taken and photographed and then would be sent to where it was supposed to be, because the mail was competing with the supplies and all of the things, so that it was very difficult. And so this is one example of a Vmail. They were all this size, they were photocopied, and so that took up a lot less room than airmail.
Uh-huh. So you didn't have to deal with several envelopes and that was his handwriting.
Yes. And so they would photocopy it, and then when they in New Guinea, or it probably was in Australia, anyway, there would be a place, and then they would print it off and put it in this little envelope, and then it would be delivered to him or to her. This one happened to be to my mother. And here it says War and Navy Department's Vmail service, official business. So these were very important.
You get many messages in one envelope.
No,
No.
just one.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Just one.
Okay.
But when he first got to Australia, because he went from Tennessee to Mississippi, and then eventually to San Francisco to Australia, and then Australia to New Guinea. And so the first correspondence that he sent happened to be Vmails to her.
Okay.
So
and
yeah.
when you, excuse me, you talk about putting this together in a book. Are there children in your life? Are there children and nieces and nephews or anybody? Oh, okay.
Yes. My son, Douglas Rol and Erwin, his middle name is for my dad.
Okay.
His son, his youngest one's middle name is Jett. So that's family. And then my sister has 3 children, and one of them has my father's middle name. So, and then I got lots of cousins. So, and all of their families are in it in one way or the other, because I really show what the impact of World War II was on families.
Okay, so let's talk about that in a minute. What you learned about that. The reason I'm asking about children in your life is, yes, these letters can go on and on and on, generation after generation, and what a legacy for your children and grandchildren to know that they came from that kind of passion and love.
Yes.
That is a fabulous legacy to know that you came from such love.
From love and really caring about the country.
Oh,
and be willing to, fight and make huge sacrifices to defend, our freedoms. And that's really important too.
So you can be proud of your whole line back. Yeah.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes. Yes.
So talk about, just a minute ago, you were going to talk about a slightly different issue.
Remind me what that.
Yeah, I know. Somebody remind me. We were talking about what you learned historically. And when I said, do you have children? You said they are all in this. I'd like to know kind of what role they played in these letters.
What role the children?
Yeah, I mean, just that they were referred to, or.
Oh, my relatives. Okay.
Yeah.
So my father came from a huge family. He was one of 14, but 12 made it to adulthood. Okay. And so there were only 3 of the boys that actually served during World War II overseas. One of the ones actually was with the Air Corps. So he taught people how to fly.
Oh, my goodness.
And then on my mother's side, she was one of 7. And one was in the medical corps. Another one was dropping bombs over Tokyo, that he was a gunner. And so all of the brothers and sisters-in-laws was in some way involved in the war effort.
Did you feel in reading your father's letters, was there any element of fear at what he was facing?
Not really. I mean, he said, I can do this. I can do this. And a year after he had landed in New Guinea, he would say, this was a hellhole when we landed. And he described what it was like, the rain, the mud, and they had nothing. And they didn't have food for like over a day. Mm-hmm. So the other thing about the letters is that they were censored.
Oh, I was going to ask about that.
Yes. And one of the, and I'm just curious about everything, but anything related to this. So, I had to do a lot of searching about what different things meant. And so each letter, someone looked at it, and then there was a stamp that showed that it was passed. And there were a couple of times that Dad sent letters that something was marked out or cut out.
Oh my! The fear was that it was kind of classified or damaging. If
Yeah, And I know that they were told what they could write and what they couldn't write, because he said, there's so much that I want to tell you, but I can't talk about that. And she really didn't even know where he was
Oh my goodness.
in New Guinea. And it would be not until like 2 years in that he could say that he was in Milne Bay. And she had gotten a world atlas, which I happen to have,
Did. Yes.
1946, 42 or something like that. And so she would trace and try to find out and figure out where he was.
There was no
So
Google.
yeah, thank goodness for being, I mean, what I was doing was writing the introduction about how they first met, which was at a University of Tennessee football game. And so I wanted to see in 1937, who did they play and what was the time frame and whether, and so I'm just grateful for all of the tools today.
I know, just miraculous.
Yeah.
So you're going to make this into a book, and are you going to do that yourself? The reason I'm asking, my a relative actually of my husband's did a book such as this, family history, and rather than waiting, I guess, and who knows if he'd get one, for a publisher, he did it himself and sent it to everyone in the family. What will you be doing to make yours into a book?
Actually, I'm hoping that I can get it published. I'm a member of the East Tennessee Historical Society.
Oh, good.
Because that's where I'm from, and actually went over and did some research at their center. And one of the speakers recently was a man who had written a similar story based on 1,000 letters about his uncle who was killed in Europe. And it was just wonderful. And so what I intend to do, as soon as I finish it to where I want it to be finished, I'm reaching out to him.
Oh, good.
Because again, we're both from East Tennessee. It was relative. Some of the places that he mentioned were important in terms of my family's, my father's, and their dating. And then I have several other friends that have published. So I'm going to try that venue. And if not, I will.
Oh, I didn't realize you had all that open to you, because, somehow it seems to me that there's a matter, this is what they call time sensitive, that you want to get it done. Will you have pictures?
Oh my goodness. I've got so many pictures. It's
okay.
And what was fun too is that my mother would send pictures, because that would make Daddy feel closer to her.
Sure.
And so this just and I don't know if you can see this one, but
hold it up a little higher. Oh,
okay.
Oh,
and what's significant about this is it was at the farm where she grew up, and it was his car that still had the Count Shelby license plate on it. So yes, I've got pictures that he sent.
Maybe you should show us. Do you have them right there at your fingertips? More pictures?
That's
okay.
No, okay. I don't have those. I've got, some of the letters and things, but not the pictures. But
show us whatever you would like to share with us visually.
Well, this is, one of the things, and again, and I remember in your interview, you said that you were not really that much of a history person. Well, I was not either.
Oh, I am now.
Me too. I just dropped this. Because I want to know as much as I can. And so.
But you're telling it through a love story, through a historical time. This isn't names and dates and places. I mean, when history is told right.
I mean, I talk about it with the backdrop of what's going on in the war, because I felt like that context. So, I've been to the World War II Museum. I've been to the archives in DC, because I want to have as much accuracy as possible in terms of the ships that he was on. But what was interesting is because he was over there so missed her birthday, you can't go to the store. So they call it trench art. And so this was a pen that was made by some of the guys, and it's with an Australian coin. And this is not glass, but it was from the airplanes, from the shills or the cockpit glass of the airplanes.
And
And
made that in the jungle?
yes,
My goodness. Okay.
yes, because they had engineers, they had, a whole variety of people that were doing different things. And this is the other heart that the
Uh-huh.
coin. And on the back it says, New Guinea, my darling wife, 1944.
Oh, wow.
And then this was a bracelet, again, that was just made with the things that were available
Oh,
because they had to repair the vehicles.
sure.
So, I had that.
The art.
One of the things that my father was on was one of the ships that broke the transatlantic record for bringing the most soldiers back to the U.S.
Mhm.
And there was a daily newsletter, and it was the SSS Eberly. And so I have that. I don't have it
Well,
to show, but
all this will be included in your book. All
oh
the
yes,
uh-huh.
oh yes. So, and what was interesting is that after the war was over, they were still in the New Guinea, and then eventually they went to the Philippines. And because they had been there for a really long time, there was this whole thing about how do you get released? And so they wrote their congressman a letter saying, hey, we're getting a bum deal because, we've been stuck in the jungle. We don't have this many points to be able to get out. I actually have a copy of that letter that was sent to the congressman from the men of his company about the raw deal they were getting. So
It's a different day then too, where you could write. Can you write to your congressman anymore and expect some kind of response or assistance? I wonder if you can do that.
I can, but what was the most helpful for me was to actually go to Washington, D.C., to the National Archives. And there's the one that's in Maryland. Um, I got so much information.
Well, but what I meant was he, as a soldier, wrote to his congressman.
Yes, and I have, well, they wrote to the chairman of the army or something. I don't remember but I actually have a photocopy of the letter that they wrote that I had gotten at the National Archives. So,
This would be something that anybody whose family lived through and took part in World War II would want to see, for starters, and then the rest of the world also.
I think, just to appreciate what these men and women did. And I didn't realize what role my mother played because she was a teacher and they had the ration books. Most of those ration books were distributed at schools by school teachers.
Oh,
So she would work her regular schedule and then they would let the kids out at 1 o'clock and the families would be lined up to get their ration books.
my goodness. Yes, and we don't have that anymore, do we?
No.
Not in the same kind of way. And what else? I mean, you say her role in this. What was there anything else that
Well, she bought war bonds. I mean, all of the money, because he had no place to spend it. She was very thrifty.
good?
And so the war bonds, any ways that she could help, she did and she would. But the main thing was doing the rations. And she got a letter, I think, from the president thanking her for her effort in helping distribute those ration books. I had no idea about that.
Oh my goodness.
No idea about that. And the other thing is,
Up in conversation when you were a child, huh? I guess.
no, because one of my favorite books was Tom Brokaw's book, the greatest generation. And that gave me background and understanding about them. And then when I was reading their letters and their diaries and things, it made that real to me that once they got home, that job was done and they didn't want to talk about it.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that. Yes, sometimes you have to, I don't know that you have to, but sometimes people choose to close their eyes to the difficulty so they can forge ahead in happiness. And how wonderful that you have these letters to correct what you didn't get told.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
thank you for doing this with me. This is great. And just to know, the power of letters, of course, which I always am big on. And not just that, but, letters to the congressman and Vmail, and how much attention the government apparently put into getting letters to soldiers, because we know that that's what keeps up hope.
Hope, motivation. It literally kept my father alive. And he said, I get more mail, more packages than anyone here. And he, for the most part, did not get discouraged in his letters. Now, trying to get home in a timely manner, he was not real happy, but he thrived on those.
Okay, well, you'll let me know when this book is done and out, right?
I will do that.
So
I will do that.
Everybody about it. Thank you. This has just been so extra enlightening and just supportive of what letters can do, what they mean, and the post office and everything else. Thank you so much, dear.
You're welcome. I'm so glad I could share their story with you.
Me too. I'm just so glad I got to hear it. And
yes.
What are you calling the book? Do you have a title?
Yes.
May I?
Letters, Love, and Longing.
Oh,
My parents' World War II story. Yes.
That's a wonderful title. Okay, I'm going to look for that, and I'm going to look to talk to you another time. Thank you.
Sounds great. Okay. Thank you so much, Janet. Bye.